We are guardians, powerful warriors, wielders of the Traveler's Light. We wage a never-ending war against the darkness. To understand why we fight, and understand the foundation that sets so much into play in the coming story of Destiny, we must go into the past, to a gas giant in an unknown star system, millions of years ago. This is the journey that takes us towards our destiny.
The Books of Sorrow. Prologue to the Taken King. The gas giant was called the Fundament. One of the trillions of lifeforms on Fundament, the Proto-Hive were never meant to live there. Their planet crashed onto its surface, forming continents. Few survived to the end of their 10-year natural lifespan. The Osmium King discovered that the 52 moons of Fundament would soon align, causing a syzygy or godwave to destroy all life on their world. Teox, tutor to the king's daughters, judged them all unfit to rule, and set a plan in motion to remove them, urging the rival Krill helium drinkers to attack. As he died, the Osmium King warned his daughters, curious Arash, brave Shiro, and clever Sathona, of the coming cataclysm. Sathona took her father's dying worm familiar from his corpse. The worm counseled her on how to escape the kingdom and survive in the wilds of Fundament. In time, the sisters discovered an intact derelict starship called the Needle. Only Sathona knew that the dead worm had spoken to her, kept them alive, and led them to the Needle to learn its secrets. Now the worm commanded her again, board the ship, and dive to the core of Fundament. The sisters dove deep. They encountered the Leviathan, a massive beast guarding what was locked away inside Fundament. The Leviathan spoke to the sisters of the war between the sky and the deep, the form and the formless. It spoke of how the sky gives and builds places safe for life, and the deep snuffs that life from existence. The sisters argued with the Leviathan. The beast pled with the sisters to abandon this path to the deep, and to return to their hard but just life. The sisters refuted the Leviathan's words, and dove deeper. Appearing before them in the deep were the 5 giant worms, Yul, Er, Zol, and Akka. Yul spoke to Arash and her sisters, describing how the worms had been confined in the deep. They had called out to the galaxy for life to come to Fundament, so that one day they could have new beloved hosts. The 3 sisters were offered a deal, the Worms' Pact. They would take into their bodies the larvae of the worms, and from them obtain eternal life and the power to enact the revenge. The worms only asked that the sisters remain true to their nature. Arash, who would become Aryx and assume the male king morph, would never refrain from exploration and inquiry. Shiro, who would become Shivu Arath and assume the night morph, would never cease to test her strength. Sathona, who would become Savathun and assume the mother morph, would never abandon cunning. If any of them turned from their nature, their worms would consume them, and as their powers grew, so would the worms' appetite. Aryx, Shivu Arath, and Savathun accepted the Worm Pact, forever sealing their fate with the worms their gods, and setting in motion eons of destruction. The worm gods told the 3 siblings of an agent of the sky, known as the Traveler, and of its light. The worm gods told the sisters the Traveler planned the syzygy, and was aiding the Ammonites, a bony 6-armed cephalopod race that resided on one of Fundament's moons. Teox was found hiding among the Ammonites. In the war against the Ammonites, Aryx struggled to establish a foothold, and the worms made Savathun kill him. In this state of temporary death, they entrusted to Aryx and his 2 sisters the logic of the sword, the killing logic. Sword logic dictates that by killing a thing, you prove yourself more deserving than it to exist. The power gained from this logic would also grant them eternal life, as long as they were not killed within their own throne world. After a long war, the sisters destroyed the Ammonites, but the traveler and Teox fled. Thus began Auryx's long and fierce hunt for both. Auryx, Savathun, and Xivu-Arath now waged war on each other, practicing the sword logic by killing one another over and over to grow stronger. Eventually they agreed it was time to go to war on all life in the universe. The three siblings sought to become the last true shape, the power behind and reason why anything and everything existed. They realized in time that they could never achieve the last true shape. Once the entire universe was taken by Auryx and his sisters, there would be no light left to consume, and Auryx would be eaten by his worm. The three siblings realized they were marching towards their own end and were unable to stray from the path. Meanwhile, a collection of races known as the Ecumene recovered the runaway Teox, frozen in stasis. The Ecumene had previously encountered the Hive, but could not hold them off. Fighting the Ecumene took a toll on the siblings as they struggled to keep up with their worm's appetite. Xivu-Arath offered her power to her brother, letting Auryx kill her. Savathun offered herself as well, but true to her clever nature, tried to kill Auryx to empower herself. Auryx killed her before she could, and so proved himself more powerful than both his sisters. Armed with the power and cunning of his sisters, he sought out his god Akka, Worm of Secrets, and killed it with his sword and words. He took from it the secret of calling on the deep, wrote it on a set of tablets, and named them the Tablets of Ruin. He emerged as Auryx, the Taken King. He possessed the power to take life and shape it to his will. With his new influence, he returned to the war with the Ecumene. While exterminating them through war and cunning plans, he conjured his sisters back to his side. The Ecumene fell to the might of Auryx, Xivu-Arath, and Savathun. They were only the first race among many to suffer being taken. Teox, though, yet again slipped away. Auryx came to have children. 2 twin daughters, Iranuk and Ir-Halak, and a son, Crota. His daughters studied death and moving between spaces, and used this knowledge to create an oversoul. An oversoul was a mechanism for hiding one's death, protecting Ascendant Hive from being killed. Auryx stumbled upon his daughter's research, and when that idea was explained to Auryx, he wished Crota to learn from his sisters. Auryx left to commune with the deep, and in his absence, Crota, wanting to create an oversoul of his own, cut a hole in the Ascendant Plane with his sword. Unknown to Auryx, it had been Savathun who tricked Crota into cutting that space. Through this hole poured the Vex, which quickly attempted to take over this new space. The laws of a throne world were new to the Vex, and they struggled to understand them. Kuria, Blade Transform, a powerful Vex Axis mind, was deployed and quickly deduced the sword logic. It understood that in order to become the most powerful, it needed to kill everything else. A new onslaught of warrior Vex attacked, slaughtering Hive by the thousands. Kuria also deduced the true nature of the Hive power, their paracausal worm. Kuria ordered worship of these beings, but never tried to introduce the worms into the Vex mind fluids. The worm gods observed this, and warned Auryx to regain control. The Taken King returned to his throne world to find it in ruins. He cast Crota through the hole his son had cut, wanting him to return victorious or not at all. He took several of the Vex, turned them against each other, and defeated Kuria. Auryx took Kuria, but left part of its will intact, and gave it to Savathun. Auryx turned his throne world inside out, fusing it with the Dreadnought, created from the remnants of the worm god Akka, commingling the material nature of his ship with the immaterial nature of the throne world to make them one. To feed the worms sufficiently, the Taken King defined the law of tribute. This allowed the siblings to gather the light from their underlings in the form of a tithe and have an endless supply. Every hive took as much as they needed to feed their worm, kept as much as they dared for themselves to grow, and sent the rest to the hive above them. Auryx created his court of Ascendant Hive, those able to gather enough tribute to enter the Netherworld. The forces of the Hive have waged war upon hundreds of worlds. conquering each, snuffing out life throughout the galaxy as they hungrily chased the traveler.